Welcome to the Heat of Command podcast, mastering the art of fire service leadership.
Where we, your hosts, aim to teach you how to use introspection and self-reflection to be your most authentic, genuine self, leader, and human being.
And now, here are your hosts. This is Kyle Matusik.
And Kerry Henderson. Thanks for joining.
Welcome back to another episode of the Heat of Command podcast. Today, from the suburban Chicagoland area, it's almost 80 degrees outside at the end of April, so it's been pretty nice. But today we're going to bring, I think, what is a very important topic across our industry and many industries is that kind of word succession planning. Sometimes I like to look at it as continuity planning because sometimes it's not what we're going to do when people leave, but how do we continue to provide the same service or more as people leave our industry, especially when we start looking at our industry and how young it is becoming. I know my organization in and of itself is one of those where it is just so, it's crazy. It's crazy for me to walk in to work and I'm the old guy at 40 years old, So we have just seen this complete turnover over the last few short years. It's like it just happened. It's like COVID accelerated everything. And all of a sudden we snap our fingers. We're having trouble hiring people in our organizations. People are coming in and they're leaving and retention's bad across the industry. And I don't think we're just the only industry. And now we're just such a young industry, and I think it's a nationwide thing. I don't think anybody is exclusive to having that problem. I think the outliers are the ones who have that balanced level of age within their departments, right? I think that would be the outliers right now. And it's so how do we plan for the future? How do we look forward when so many people are young within our organizations? One of the things I was just talking to at work with a colleague of mine was, we were just talking about before we got on, is you see a lot of these people, these 4, 5, 6-year people who, they didn't earn seniority. It was just given to them by default where they become like the senior blue shirt on the shift just because, right? Because there's nobody else and that's it. And I think there's been some issues with that, obviously, too much rapid growth when we're still trying to perfect the aspects of the job in and of itself. So there's a lot of challenge, I think, up and down when we look at succession planning in organizations that are so young. And there's what we do with that. And, as we look at challenges, it's also an opportunity for action and growth and looking at things a little bit differently on how we could progress our organizations.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about this very thing in our organization. I think historically in the fire service, we've done a lot. There's always a lot of thought on replacing your company officers because that's usually your biggest cohort of officers. So in our department, there's a captain at every station. At 2 stations, there's 2 captains. There's 2 company houses. There's 2 captains. There's a captain in training. There's a captain in what we call the Connect program, which is like mobile integrated healthcare. So we have lots of captains. And so there's always discussions about, when captains leave and replacing captains. But up until lately, there's not been a ton of talk of, eventually you have to replace your fire chief. And you have to replace your assistant chiefs, and you have to replace your battalions. And we do talk about battalion chief replacement, but you have to be thinking constantly about in 5 years and 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, are you hiring and promoting and developing people that could be a fire chief one day, right? Because I think it's a different subset of people. It's 100% a different subset of people, sometimes that make great fire chiefs. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be thinking about that. So we had a big discussion a few years ago, about what happens when our fire chief leaves. And he's very young. We have a very young fire chief. We have a very young operations assistant chief. Our administrative assistant chief is older and on his second career. He came from another department, but he will retire sooner than later. And what does that look like for us with a very young department? Who and when will people be ready to step into those positions? Because it happened to us before when we had an assistant chief and a deputy chief leave that no one was quite ready for that. There was no one really, And we did go outside for one of those. We'd love to go to keep it internal though, right? Everyone does. To promote from within, people understand your culture, they've grown up within your culture. So, there's pros and cons to both of those things. But so, we kind of had to go through our whole roster of how long would certain people be working, who could take different spots, because some of us, are married to people in the fire service. If you have any familiar familia familial if anybody you're related to in the county, you can't be the fire chief. So it's all these things. So we had to look at that, and it was just crazy to go way down the list of thinking about in 10 years, some of these young, brand new captains, we had to start making sure they're ready to take on those more senior roles. And you mentioned, some of your 4 and 5 year guys being given that seniority thing. Uh, and I'm going to play devil's advocate because some of our 4 and 5 year guys are killing it. Like, and some of them are really earning it. And I think they get a lot of flack for being kind of in the senior role. And a lot of people think, well, you've not been here long enough to earn that. But some of them, man, I'm like, oh, you're killing it. And I can see it because at 5 years you can sit for promotion if you've been through our acting captain process, which is a whole nother thing. But I tell some of our senior guys that have been trying and trying to get promoted, said you're up against some tough competition because they're going to come in here and smoke this thing because they're just all in. They're just all in, and they're really, really doing a good job. Now, some of them, you know, maturity and learning to lead people and learning to say hard things and all that other stuff that goes along that we talk about that's important. Yeah. Some of them, that's the hard part for them. And that's what we need to be teaching them. And that's why they need to be listening to podcasts.
Yeah, I think the key you said there was earning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You could have your 4 or 5 year people earn it, but when they are just given that,
Yeah.
or by default, even and not even senior people, right? Yeah, I even see it in older folks who just all of a sudden become the most senior blue shirt on the department, or this or that, and it's like they didn't earn that; they just fell into that position or that title because they're the oldest, right? So it's just kind of wild. And my encouragement for the young people out there is just you got to earn everything, and if you earn it, like it's yours.
Yeah.
You don't want positions by default. I think you can see right through that, and it's not authentic, and that's all other stuff. But when we look at like planning for the future, and it's so interesting to listen and how it's done with you, because and we've talked about this in the past, right? Illinois is a very strong union state. And so the unions dictate how promotions happen, and it is what it is. It's contractual. This is what we do. So a lot of times it becomes a very contentious environment during promotions. And when we look at professional development plans and how we're going to plan for the future, it's like there is none, and it's just very interesting to see like I said, to hear what you have to say. And then like I look around and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing any of that. Like, how are we preparing for 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? I don't plan on being there in 5 years. So, and I know a lot of our senior people that are older than me aren't going to be there. Like, what's that? We were just having this conversation. I'm like, what is our department going to look? What is this department going to look like in 7 years? Who are your company officers? Who are your battalion chiefs? And you're like, wow. And what are we, what are we doing to try and build them up or prepare them for that? And it's like, I think we are swinging and missing at that opportunity to really build people up and teach them the roles of these jobs and these positions, because we need to, because one day they are going to be in charge of a fire scene. They are going to be in charge of a company, and that is a huge responsibility. And, it's one of those things that I just think is commonly, at least by us, is commonly just overlooked, and it's not something we examine, and it's not something we look at. And there's the word succession planning or continuity planning, like it has never been brought up in my
Yeah.
organization, and it's like, and it's kind of unreal. You have to prepare. And it's almost like you could take it into strategic planning when you look at strategic planning, and if you want to set a 10-year strategic plan out and staying internal with your promotions, you can strategically plan even when you're not the fire chief. When you leave, the plan continues, and all those people can be part of that plan. But I think it's, you need to work on. I think the key is building your people up and giving them the opportunities. So much of what we have talked about in terms of responsibilities around the firehouse, whether it be SCBAs, tools, this and that, and then you just build on that. So then make it budgetary, and slowly but surely, incrementally, we're building them up. But now here in 2025, we have to do that a little bit quicker than maybe 10 years ago, So where you could stick somebody in, maybe you're in charge of tools for 5 years, and then we're going to build you up and we're going to show you budgeting, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now we're going to have you in charge of tools for 6 months. And then after 6 months, we're going to already get you into budgeting for that stuff because we need to. We don't have a choice. So everything is has to move faster in terms of how we're going to teach our people. And then the flip side of that is the people in which we are training. Do they have the ability to comprehend all that knowledge that's coming in, to learn that quickly? Do they even want to, or are they just there to ride back step or drive the fire truck their whole career, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and the extracurriculars they want nothing to do with. So it's a very dynamic situation right now as we unfold this. And it's wow, there's a lot of challenges, and the opportunity, I think, not really the opportunity. I think every organization out there, their number one priority, and it should always be your people, right? And it could be cliche, but your number one priority right now in 2025 is looking at your organization and figuring out what you're going to do with everybody and where's it going to be in 10 years. And that should be your focus, because you have to build people up, not all this outside ancillary stuff that a lot of people just get head over heels for and too involved with and too deep in. It's your organization. Put a wall around your organization, figure out the problems, and start working on them, and working on them fast, because 5 years is going to go quick and all the senior people are going to be gone.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting, growing up in the fire service, and I've always liked to be a part of the committees and the work groups, and I always appreciated the opportunity to be involved in those, and I could see, the benefit of, getting opinions from different folks in the fire service. And now I really, really see the importance of. So I feel like before, work groups were kind of a thing because the fire department felt like you had to, right? You had to
Right.
include people so that to get the buy-in,
Hmm.
which is very, very important. But not just to get their buy-in, it's an educational component. So we're doing a PPE trial right now, and so I'm running that work group, and I've got, all kinds of different folks in there, and we're at the getting towards the end, and we're really close in points. The data's come back really close in points between two. So we tested 5 manufacturers, gear manufacturers, and they're really close to 2, and one is more expensive than the other. And so we've been doing lots and lots of discussion in the group about, okay, it's going to cost this much more. This is how we pay for that gear. We pay for our gear out of fire programs funds, which is aid to locality money, which, a ton of people in the service don't know what that means. So in Virginia, if you own a home, part of your homeowner's insurance, you pay a fee. There's a little hidden fee in there, and that goes to the state. It's called aid to locality, and based on the population of your community, you get money. So in James City County, we get about 400 and some $1,000 every August or September-ish, and you can pay for a variety of things that you don't have to budget for, in your annual budget. So we pay for turnout gear out of that. We also pay for a lot of training stuff out of that, some tools and equipment, stuff like that. You can pay for apparatus out of it. It's a bunch of different roles. Anyways, we pay for turnout gear out of that. And so we're showing them, we like to keep a cushion of about $120,000 in there, so that if, God forbid, we ever contaminate a whole shift's worth of gear and we had to replace, 35, 40 sets of gear in one pop, we always had enough to cover that. It's a kind of a rainy day fund. And so if we spend more money on turnout gear, which we are totally willing to do, because James City County is very well known for, or I should just say my department, I shouldn't keep saying the name of my department, but that's okay. We have the best of the best stuff, but if we're going to spend more money, this is where the cushion goes to, and this is what we might have to give up. And Are we willing to? Yes, probably, but who knows, right? So we wanted everyone to be a part of that discussion. And so one of our guys the other day was like, "Hey, I don't mean any offense, chiefs, but we've told you what we want, and you guys just decide. You can afford it or not afford it. And just tell us. If we can't afford it, we can't afford it. We'll get the second one." I'm like, no, man, no. uh-uh. All these people are here in this room need to understand how we're making that decision. And we really want you to make that decision. Like, we're willing to spend the money. We've got the money to do it, but this is, kind of this there may come a time where we can't do something else because of that. And this is why. And now all the people in that committee now understand fire programs funds, aid to locality funding, when we get that money, what you can and cannot use that money for. So it's this whole thing, right? And before, when I was part of committees and work groups, it was what that one firefighter was talking about. It was, give us some input, but we're going to make all these other big decisions behind scene, right? And so now we want to have those discussions openly to people, which is kind of taboo because it's
Mhm.
like now all of that is out there, but now they know, right? And so I think that for succession planning is so, 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 so important. Another thing I wanted to bring up, and this has been eye-opening for me over the last few years. We've been writing policies for drivers and operators. So driver pump operator for the engine and aerial operators, the ladder trucks, and acting captains and all these things. So in my fire department for years, and most fire departments I know, there's always like a time on the job requirement. You can't do this thing until you've been here 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is. Well, when you've replaced 3/4 of your fire department or a quarter of your fire department or a half of your fire department or whatever that is for you, you can't arbitrarily say you have to have been here 2 years, 3 years to drive an engine. And we've always done that in the fire service because in the perfect world, you do want people to have had some time. You do want your brand newbies who've never driven anything bigger than a Prius to have some time and to know different aspects of their job better. And I 110% agree with that. But when you go down your roster and you realize you're short on drivers and you're holding mandatory overtime, not because you don't have enough bodies, but because you don't have enough people to fill certain positions, drivers, officers, ladder truck people, divers. We've got a boat, we got to have a boat operator, we have to have tech team people, all those things. It's not that we don't have enough bodies, it's we don't have enough people in those certain positions. You can't necessarily put some random number assigned to that. You have to look at your roster individually and go, well, he hasn't been here that long, but I think he or she would be okay. They're fine. Or, and you really have to rely on your officers to help make that decision. So we've done a shift in some of those hard and fast. You have to have been here 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And you really have to empower your officers to say yes or to say no to people when they want to go for those things, which that's hard because if you have an officer that's a little soft, they're not willing to say, no, you're not ready yet to drive. They're just going to let everybody. So that, it is a fine line you have to walk, but you really have to empower your officers to say, we want you to decide when they're ready. And then you put them in and recommend they come through our boot camp and they come through our, driver operator program or whatever it is, aerial operator, or whatever they're going through next. So it's been interesting. And we've had the committees that have helped create these boot camps and these driver operator programs. And they were very hard and fast when they came in, like, nope, they got to have been here 2 years. They have to have been here 3 years, whatever. And we have an active battalion chief program now, and they were hard and fast about that time frame. And our assistant chief really had to show them, like, on a piece of paper, like, or on a whiteboard, here's all the people you just eliminated if you set that. Because people don't know how long people have been here, and this is what's going to happen. So if we say 3 years, and then this person retires, and this person retires, and this person retires, this is who you have left that's eligible. And we just really limit that pool. So anyways, that was a whole tyrant, a whole little rant I had there, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's all.
I think it really puts in concrete terms the need for succession and continuity planning because, it's just through my career, and I think many careers, as we face problems, this is how we live our lives, right? We face a problem as it comes in. The tones go off, we go face a problem. And it's almost like we have that same mentality with the things around the firehouse. Like, if we had good succession planning, and I'm not saying where you don't or anybody out there doesn't, and good continuity planning over years, like we could have forecasted this and already had things in place, whether it was reevaluating policies to take, time on job stuff off or whatever, we could have had everything in place, and that's the idea when we look at this type of planning and strategic planning is to we can forecast what's going to happen because in 15 years from now, 20 years, you're going to have the complete opposite. You're going to have a bunch of old people on your fire departments and no young people, and that's going to present different challenges in terms of on the job injuries, workers comp claims, sick time usage. Like, you're going to have those problems and you're barely going to have any young people on. So it's everything just ebb and flows, it goes. So how can we better prepare in the future? And it's looking and forecasting, and your forecast isn't always going to be right, but it allows for that critical thinking and to look at things from a different angle instead of the same old, same old. Look, our industry has changed drastically. And if your leadership approach and how you're running your organization is still stuck in 15 to 20 years ago, you're doing it wrong. Point blank, you're failing and you're doing it wrong because it just doesn't work right now and it's not going to work. We have to advance forward. I don't care what happened to you as a probie, different organization, different industry. We have to plan, we have to forecast, and we have to make sure people are ready to do this job in 10 years from now because it is going to be an extremely, extremely young industry. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's just the plans are in place. We're ensuring that people are ready for these positions. We have to be ready on both sides. That person has to be ready to, drive a fire truck, $1 million vehicle down the road, and vice versa. We as an organization have to be comfortable with them driving that $1 million vehicle on the road. So how do we align those stars, and just go down that road? Because sometimes I feel like as the problems arise is we make a decision right there on the spot. We don't have a driver. Well, did they get their FAE? Yeah, they're driving today. And it's like, hold on, right? Like,
What's
this is
FAE? I don't know that one.
apparatus engineer.
Okay.
I don't know what you call it there in Virginia. What do you call it in Virginia?
Is that like just a certification or a
Yeah.
program or
Yeah,
okay.
certification. Fire apparatus
Oh,
engineer,
yes.
pump operator.
Okay, so okay, yeah, so we have Virginia Department of Fire Programs has a driver pump operator
Okay.
certification class, but it's yeah, we put them through a program
Yeah, so,
now,
like,
and
as long as
we
they have
didn't
that
before, but now we do.
as long as they have that certificate in their fire service vehicle operating class, like, you know, like, you're it, tag, you're it. And a lot of times, historically through my organization is that's how it's been. Like, tag, you're it. Like, all of a sudden, you go into work one day and it's like, tag, you're it. And it's like, oh, huh? What?
Yeah.
Like, this is crazy. And like I said, a lot of times people just get in this idea of this comfort of you just get a position by default because you're it. You're it that day. You're it because there's nobody else. And it's like, that's a very dangerous place to live.
Yeah, and, it makes me think too about this trend, and you and I have seen it when we're out speaking at conferences of all these places that are hiring fire chiefs from other places. Like, it's like fire chief shop city. Like, people just are moving all around to take fire chief jobs. What if your organization was setting people to be the fire chief? Like, I don't think people are doing that. They're not thinking about that. Like, that we need to have multiple people that could be very successful in our organization to be the fire chief, because then they're living and breathing your culture, and they've grown up in, or not even grown up, like maybe they came later, but whatever it is, they understand your city or your county really well, and how the politics work and what the districts look like and the trucks and purchase, like all the things. And I just see so many, like, how many people have we met when we've been around the country that have gone to work as a fire chief across the country from where they had been a firefighter for so long, and they've jumped around, and it's crazy to me. Like, I just can't imagine, I've been in James City. Oh, I grew up here, so that's a bonus. Like, I've been, in the fire department here 20 plus years, and I just know all the little ins and outs. Like, I can't imagine, like, going to work somewhere and I'm driving down the road in my chief's vehicle and I have to mark out with a vehicle accident. Like, I wouldn't even know where I was, like, if I had to move to a new city. It's just crazy to me.
Yeah, no, we've talked about back here, I think a lot of things are very politically motivated. I there's this essence of, you know, I I'll call it for what it is, double dipping in pensions here in Illinois, and you see a lot of that. You see a lot of that where fire chiefs leave, they get their pension, and they go into another organization to get another
Yeah.
pension.
Yeah, we
and
have that here.
we see a lot of that, and I think what's hard with that, especially right now in our times, and this is my belief, when we have the chiefs that are that old doing that, they are not in line with what is going on in the industry. They are stuck in those, like I said, 20 years ago, this is how we used to do things, this is how I'm going to do things, and it's not working. It is simply not working. I'm sorry. We are at a time where you do need younger fire chiefs in there. People who still have, I'm not saying a 5-year guy, right? I'm not saying a 10-year guy, but people who have maybe 20 years on the job and maybe have accompanied by a degree or whatever, or who have proven themselves. Age and time on nowadays, in my opinion, is not the end all be all to make somebody eligible to be a fire chief. This job embolds so much nowadays from everything that we run, the leadership principles, the challenges we face with recruiting and retention and younger generations and young fire departments, the health and wellness side of it too, right? We were talking about that before we got on, like who's proactive there. There is just so much that has changed over the course of the last 20 or 30 years. And we just need that progressive, forward thinking leaders in these spots and to provide the environments that me and you talk about to encourage the succession and continuity planning and just get away from the old ways of doing stuff because it doesn't work. Not now.
And I would like to give every fire department out there right now a pep talk, because this is what I saw happen in our department. And I've seen this happen so many times. Is you've got a young fire department and you're all, especially if you've only worked in your department, you think there is something out there to fix your department. So, especially if you're having some problems. So, there's this thought, and I see this so many times that, well, somebody coming from a bigger metropolitan department, or somebody coming from here, or somebody that's been out on the leadership circuit, or somebody that's been teaching at FDIC, or somebody that's this, or somebody that's that, has the answers, and we don't. So we believed that for so many years, that so tactical guidelines or order of arrival assignments, whatever you call them in your jurisdiction, like if you have policies that say what your first engine, second engine, third engine, whatever, does on different types of calls. We believed we didn't know how to figure that out and that we needed to look at all these other policies. And so we were trying to fit them in to the way we run. Well, it wouldn't work. And we tried and tried for years and years. And finally, it was like, hey, we have some really freaking smart people that work here, like really smart. Like some of my coworkers are like Rain Man smart. We can figure this out for our own department and make it way better because it works in our county is so unique the way it is set up. And and we have to make our own thing, right? Same with hiring outside. Same with anything like that. So I want to give you guys a pep talk. You have people in your organization that are smart enough and capable enough and already understand your county. Like, just trust in that. It takes a little while to work through a lot of that decision-making stuff, but this whole idea that there's someone out there from Chicago or FDNY or wherever it is that because they've worked in this other fancy place, and there's nothing wrong with, any of those amazing departments, but I promise you that you have people in your department that are freaking smart, and you just gotta run with it. So that's Kerry's soapbox. And I think once we kind of turned the page on that, it was like, hey, yeah, we can do this. Like, oh, we just felt like we were this little county, like, and we've grown tremendously, that surely we didn't have the answers or we didn't have the experience, but we did. We had what was more important, we had our own personal experience in our own county, which that's what we needed.
Yeah, I couldn't I completely agree with that. I think that is well said, and it's something I probably don't even think of much because it just is what it is, and that's how it always is y we speak of the people and not to discredit the people that, do all those things and have those ideas and wanna share those ideas, but you're right, a lot of the problems can be solved internally within your organization, and that was beautifully put, and looking outside is yeah. Why is that such like an initial thought, right? We have to look outside. We need to get advice from here and there and there. And it's like, hold
And
on.
I'm not saying, like, don't reinvent the wheel, so
Right.
definitely reach out for ideas. So, like, I sit on a group called the Hampton Roads Training Officers Group, and it's all of the departments in on like, in Hampton Roads. So, Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, it's just all the way up to we're probably the most northern department. But we constantly are shooting emails, and we meet once a month, like, "Hey, what are you guys doing for this? What are you guys doing for that?" And we share stuff, but it's a starting point, not to reinvent the wheel. But you've gotta have people that know your department and how things work for you guys, and it's just a mindset shift. So, yeah,
Yeah.
you have people.
Yeah. It definitely is a mind shifting
Yeah.
that mindset for sure. I think that's just where our industry is. It is a complete shift of mindset. It's preparation, it's forecasting, it's utilizing the people that you have. It's building them up a lot quicker than we used to in the past.
Yeah.
It's hitting the floor running now as you get these new people in, and you got to advance them quickly, comfortably, right? We still have to, as we've talked about in our speeches, we still have to build that competence and confidence in them. Uh,
Yes.
But you just have to do it at an accelerated rate and ensuring that they're grasping everything that you're telling them and just forecast what the next year is going to look like, the next 2 years, 5 years, and how we're going to not only replace retirees, but how are we going to build our people? How are we going to develop them? How are we going to prepare them to promotion? And you have to do all that extremely quickly nowadays.
Yep. Well, this was again like therapy for me.
Hmm. Always
Always
good.
is. Yes. So, well, enjoy your beautiful weather in
Oh, yeah,
Chicagoland. It's
absolutely.
beautiful here too.
It could snow tomorrow, so who knows?
We have really bad pollen, so that's been
Ah,
terrible, but it's pretty, very green here.
yeah, it is.
Very
It's
nice.
nice.
Well, listeners, thank you for letting us just rant and rant and rant. We hope you enjoyed this episode. See you next time.
As we wrap up another episode, this has been Kyle
And Kerry.
from the Heat of Command podcast.
Thank you, as always, for listening. Please make sure to follow and subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And as always, we love the feedback. Keep it coming.
See you next time.